Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to STEM Lockdown Digital School. This is grade 12 IT, and I am Lalani Lagranzi, your presenter. We are now in week 8 of teaching you guys, so it feels like I actually know some of you. I'd like to meet you guys one day. So, as promised, we're going to look at the OOP question of 2017, and very good paper to practice because it's a long question. So there is more to be tested in this paper than your 40-mark question. We don't know which parts they will give and which ones you are going to create. So best is to practice all of them. As usual, we're going to look at the attributes once we open our class, because it's important to take note of what they hold as well as the dot types of them. You also have been given some completed and incomplete methods. And also a system date format is set for you, but we'll get to that. So the first question is asking us to write the constructor method, and the word receive is indicating here comes my parameters. So we have the name of the certificate holder, the expiry date, the security code, and the issue number. That's 4 parameters. Make sure that this is the part where you should highlight your parameters and count them, and make sure you don't create a constructor with more or less of them. And we are just going to assign these parameters to our attributes as we have done before. So I see it's all my usual customers here, so I'm not going to take too long to do this. There they are. Remember, we're going to match our parameters here with the strings available, or the attributes that was given to us. So we're going to match them. And then that number that it's receiving, the issue number, is going to be an integer. So remember, fields go first, so they must always go on the left of the assignment statement, and the parameters on the right. So nothing much to this. By now, if you've been watching me, you should get full marks for that. So our next question here is asking us to write a method called increase issue number. It's not saying that it's returning a value, there's no result, and it's not saying that it's an accessor method. So therefore, it will definitely be a procedure. And I also see that it's not telling me that it's receiving a value. It's simply just increasing an issue number by 1. And I have spoken to you guys about a typical question like this before. In previous examples, what we've done is we had a parameter and the field increases by that parameter. So you have to just read carefully. This one was just a procedure, no parameter. And all we're doing is we inking the issue number, and that was really it. So just making it 1 higher. You could also use if issue number is assigned to if issue number plus 1. So if we have a look at the next question, this is asking us to complete the reset expiry date question. And it wanted you to take today's date and then add 1 to it. So I'm just going to read both of these for you now, so I don't have to jump back and forth so much. The next, so that is resetting it, taking today's date plus 1 year. Then the next question said complete the method has expiry that will use the date, and we're returning a value. So this is a function. This one here it's not saying returning, so that would be a procedure. And this one wants to test if the expiry date has been reached. So that would mean, is the expiry date less or equal to today's date? But there was a little trick. Hi, Sean, glad you could join us on how to do that. So let's just go to the first one. I'm just going to show you guys here. There's the reset expiry date. It's a procedure, and has expired is Boolean. Neither of them had parameters. We didn't see the word receive in there. So this was the provided code. So they have given you the date format, and today's date has now been stored as day, month, and 4 years. Now, since they're using the 2 Ds there, you should know that the date will be, let's say, like for today, also the 2 M's. For today, it's the 5th of May. It will store a 05. So your position of your year is constant. So you can use, you don't have to find the slashes. If they maybe did this, then you would have to find the slashes, because then a date like the May would not show 0, 5, but it will show just the 5. And then the length of the string will change all the time. So for this date here, I'm going to find the position or copy out the year by copying from position 7. Very important for 4 characters. Remember that last argument of copy is how many characters we need to copy. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm storing that as is here. Yes, you can do it in more than in just one line. I'm just breaking it down for you guys since I'm explaining. And now what I need to do is I need to add 1 to that year. So I need to increase that year with 1. I'm just changing the string to an integer and adding 1 to it. So if I ran this today, the year will now be 2021. But now you need to get rid of the old year because that will still show the day. Well, if we run it today, it will still show 2020. So I need to delete that from sysdate, and then I need to add on this new year that I created just now. So I'm deleting the system date from the 7th character for 4 characters. So now I'm rid of that back part. When we marked this, it was very important that you kept that slash because a lot of learners left that slash or somehow deleted it and never put it back. So then the question asks us now to set our new expiry date using our current system date, and then which would be the front part there, and then adding this new year to it. I'm just quickly reading what Sean is asking. How would you update a date time picker? Sean, are you asking me how to reset it? Because I'm not sure if you want to reset it or what do you mean by update a date time picker? We can get input from the user from a date time picker, and then we can also reset it. And if you have to reset it to today's date, you will I'll type it in here quickly. It's going to give me errors, but DTP, whatever the name is of my date time picker, dot date is assigned to today's date. I can do that to reset it. To get input from a date time picker, I would put that on the right of the assignment statement. And then on the left here, I would say, let's declare a variable ddate, and that would be a tdate data type. Or you could store it as a string, but then around this here, around this part here, you would have to put date to string here, date to string. And that's how you would store the input from the user. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there. We're not going to use the date time picker here though. So here we have updated now using our system date. And now if we call this procedure, if expiry date would have changed to 1 year after today's date. This didn't accommodate for February, but in the examples of output, they didn't include February, and the exams were written in November. So this wouldn't work for February because of the leap year. You would have a little bit of an issue if you're on the last day of the year, of the month. Sorry, that was now reset. The other one I looked at just now was has expiry date. The system date was given again. And here we can now compare 2 dates with each other, but you have to be very careful when comparing dates. You can't compare them as strings because, for example, if I have a date that said the 30th of whatever month, and I'm comparing it with what will we use? The 1st of any month. But my day, so I'm testing if the 30th of 2000 of February, well, now I'm using February, that is quite funny. Okay, the 30th of January 2000, is it larger than the 1st of May 1999? And that would actually be false if you're comparing them as strings, because Delphi is going to compare the 1 and the 3. Sorry, I'm lying. This is not a good example. the 30th of January 2000, this will return a true, because it's looking at the 3. Is the 3 bigger than the 1? So let's say I made this example a year after 2000. It's still going to say that the year 2000 is going to be bigger than 2005 due to it comparing that first character as a string. So it's for that reason that we have to change the date, both the system date and the date stored in your expiry date, from a string to a date. So it can actually compare the dates with each other, and a date that is earlier, so a date in the past will have a smaller date than a date in the future. And then your if statement will do that correctly. So be very careful of not leaving them as strings. It might give you the right output for the day that you have selected, and you won't even notice, but you would lose marks for not comparing them as dates. So just remember again, I have said this before, when a function is returning a Boolean value, make very sure that your result is assigned to both true and false. So some people will leave this part out, so your function is only returning a true. So make sure that your result can also return a false. So if this date has reached the expiry date, or today's date is greater or equal to the expiry date, then I'm going to return a true because it has expired. Else I'm going to return a false. So this has expired, and then also our other procedure to reset the expiry date. Now this question, the next question here, many people lost marks. It's asking us to generate a code. There's not a function. I don't see the word result or return. We are going to set a value to this F security code. So we have to pick random numbers to find the security code. It's a hexadecimal number. Well, hexadecimal values are being used in here. And the security code has to have 2 digits and then a colon and then 2 digits. But the place where people lost marks was, number 1, they added a colon at the end. And the second part was that they didn't randomly pick values. So it must be possible when you're creating this code that 2 numbers can be picked, or 2 characters can be picked, or a combination of the 2, or the number can go first and then the letter from the alphabet. And it shouldn't consistently pick number, character. A lot of learners did that. So then they lost quite a few marks. And I'm going to show you a little trick that hopefully would help you in the next exam, that you can use this method, because it can be used by many. Well, I've used it in many past papers. So first, I'm going to build a security code. So I'm setting my security code to an empty string, because we're going to change the security code. It's getting a new value. And then I've declared a string of chars, and I've put all my possible values in there that the security code can be made up of. And I am creating 5 sets of numbers. So 2 digits, colon, 2 digits, colon. So I'm just looping 5 times. And every time I'm looping, I'm picking a random number from 1 to 16. There are 16 numbers up here. So that's why my random range goes 1, 17. So that would pick 16 numbers. And now I'm using that random number to pick a random character from this char string. So I'm just putting the square brackets in there, and I'm adding that character to my security code. So there's other ways of doing this as well. Just important that you are picking a random number from either characters or numbers, and that it is possible to have both characters or both numbers being picked. So I am building a string here with my random number picked, and then I pick my second number and I do the same here. And then at the end of my loop, I'm just adding that colon there. So now I have a security code, 2 characters, colon, 2 characters, 5 times. Now, what is important is in my solution, I also added a colon at the end. I could have placed an if statement in here to test if k is 5, don't add it, or something like that. But what I've done is I just used my delete procedure to delete from the security code, starting at the length and just deleting for one character. So that's how I got rid of that colon. So when, unfortunately, you would only notice once you run your program, you call your toString. So make sure that you take note of that. I wanted to show you guys a different example that could also be part of a question. Let's say they asked you the same question, but they said you may not select the same character twice. So this is what I've done in here. I am still looping 5 times, but my random range are now going to use the length plus 1 of schar. Because what I'm doing is if I add a character to my string here, I'm then deleting that character from the string. So that it's not possible for me to select the same number twice. So that would be the position of the character and delete one character. So the length of schar is getting shorter and shorter every time that I am picking a new number, and that's why I'm using the length here. So I just thought to show you guys this because I'm sure I've seen something similar to this before. The last part we had to do was just the toString, and I'm just going to show you guys the toString. They gave us a lot of code here. All the labels were given, as well as the enter plus the empty line that is on the screenshot. All you had to do was you had to add your attributes there in the correct places, and remember to use into string for your issue number. So that was really it for the toString. Remember, this is your time now to save and run your program. No output will be given, but you guys will see that any syntax errors that you have made. So that is the toString. Then we've been given a text file in the main form, and we have to look for, the person enters a value, we then look for their name. So the example they use here is GG Technologies. We're going to look for that name, and then we're going to instantiate the object with these values. So we have to separate them and then call our constructor create. So that is basically what is asked. We have to test if the file exists and display a suitable message. And then if the file exists, we have to start searching. Now, when we find this person, we then have to instantiate the object and make the panel visible. And then we also have to tell the user if we have not found this digital certificate yet and make that panel invisible. So therefore, I needed a Boolean value, and I'm quickly going to show you guys here. Oh, I'm in the wrong form. Let me just show you guys question 2.1. Yes, I am there. Remember, if the question asks you to test, does not ask you to test if the file exists, it is something that is required that you always do. So make sure you test if the file exists. I then get input from the user for the certificate holder. This is what I'm going to search for. My normal assign and reset file, and then be found is going to be made false. Now I'm going to loop in my while loop while I've not reached the end of the file and while be found is not true, because then I would have a more efficient program. It will stop once it finds the person, but if it doesn't find the person, it will loop to the end of the file. So I have my normal read line, and this is where I recommend that you guys copy a line from the text file. Sorry, I've deleted some here when I was running this. In the front, remember, was I'm just going to put X's there. There was the name of the certificate holder, and then there was a semicolon. So that's what I'm doing here is I'm finding the position of the semicolon in the line, and then I'm copying out the name. And in order to make my program not case sensitive, I have put uppercase on both sides. So this here is the input from the user, and this is the name currently of the line. You can also use pause here, which I often use. So if I find the person, I want to make be found true, one, to make my loop stop, but also at the end to display to the user that I have not found the certificate. So this is where I have pasted a line from my text file into this loop so that I can see what I'm doing. It really helps a lot because we were finding the comma now. We've also deleted that. So what I'm sitting with in S line now looks like this. And now I have to start finding the position of the hashes. So only the first one had a semicolon. So here I'm finding the position of the hash and I'm copying out that number. Now this number inum, that is the issue number. That is all described in the textbook, in the paper where they describe the text file. And I'm copying out that number. And then I'm deleting, so I get rid of that part. And then I can copy out the expiry date. So that would be getting the hold of the hash. And then I am copying out and storing that as S date. Then I'm deleting again. So I am left there in S line with the security code. There's no need for now saying S security code is assigned to S line. You can just use S line. You don't have to store it as a new variable, but it won't be wrong if you did that. So remember, I showed you guys how to copy and paste the declaration for your of your object, copy and paste it out here, and then add the equal sign and add your dot create with your brackets. Very important is that now when you're calling your constructor create, that these arguments first of all have value. So it was important that you place the calling of the constructor after you get input from the user, also still inside of this if statement, else it won't have values. So now I call my constructor create, and I must remember that the arguments and the parameters where I created this constructor match in NOD, number, order, and data type. And we had 4 parameters, so I have 4 arguments. Order, the name was first, the date. Remember, this is now my security code. And then the issue number. And then the D for data type, 3 strings and 1 integer. And I also had to make the button visible. Don't forget about your close file. There are often a mark allocated for that close file. So make sure you have that in there. And then outside of my loop, I am testing if B found is not true. So if I haven't found it, I'm displaying the message and I'm making that panel invisible. So that was it. Yeah. So the next part of the program is now this is very simple. So the top part here was with 19 marks. And now very simply, I have to display my toString. It does tell me to clear the output, but if it didn't, I can see the output is here at the top of the rich edit. So I would add a dot clear anyway. And bright books here is the example of input. And this would now be the first time that you can actually test your program. So you had to code quite a bit before you got any output. You could run your program for your for the first button and just see if you don't get any errors, but it won't give you any output unless the certificate wasn't found. So yeah, I'm just clearing. Remember that your toString must be part of an object that is displaying something. So a rich edit in this case, dot string. A lot of learners do this. They call this toString in here. That does not work. It's a function. It must be part of another statement and usually part of an output object like a label, a panel, or a show message, or possibly even storing it in an array that is a string data type or a variable that's a string data type. But this was very easy, and that was just calling out toString. So our next part of the program is now a little bit more involved. We now have to use has expired, the function, to test if the expiry date has been reached. If it has been reached, then we have to ask the person, do they want to reset it or get a new one? And then if they say yes, so it says use an input box, so they're going to type in yes or no, Y or N. If they do say yes, then we're going to call the different methods to increase the number of the issue number to generate that new security code. So only now will you see if your security code is working. And then we had to reset the expiry date to the new expiry date. So it was important to do all of this. And then you would display the new output in the rich edit. Now, if we have a look, here is an example, and this is also part of why you have to do past papers, and some of them have errors. So I know our previous errors that we saw was in the supplementaries, but this final paper actually had an error in there too. The first one here is correct. It said, example of output if GG Technologies, their certificate has expired, but they said no, they don't want to receive a new certificate. So when you're displaying their toString, the original values were still displaying. However, in the second example of output, they said that they wanted a new digital certificate. And remember that the expiry date had to be 1 year after today. And in the screenshot here, they're still using 2016. Now, remember this paper, for learners who wrote this paper, they ran it in November 2017. So their output year should have shown 2018 and the day that they wrote the exam. So this was definitely an error in the paper. So just be aware of that. Don't go and fix your code. Remember, I've said before, if there is an error, the wording takes preference over the screenshots. So let's have a look at this solution here. And if we have a look at here, we are calling has expired. If has expired is false, the digital certificate has not expired, and I will just display a message. If it has expired, I get input from the user. So this if statement here, def or the else needs a begin and an end. Do you want to renew it? If they said yes, I'm still making my program to not be case sensitive. It's always a good idea. You never know when there is marks allocated for that. Then I have to increase the issue number. Then I have to generate the new code, and then I have to reset that expiry date. It will take me one date from today. So obviously when you're seeing your expiry date and you run this program, it will show 2021. And then I clear the rich edit and I display the toString again, because now all of these values have been updated and they will have new values shown. So that was really it for this question. I hope that helped you guys. As promised, I said to you guys, we will go to that last question that I stopped at yesterday in that theory paper. Okay. So I don't know if every one of you guys have seen the binary search method before. It's a different method of searching. The way that we've been searching, or the lessons I've had with you guys, I've shown you a linear search. So we basically search from top to bottom. Now, that would be, using your while loop, starting at the first one and looping all the way to the end. And they wanted to know why the linear search can sometimes be considered to be inefficient. Now, let's look at the list of names that I gave you. If I was looking for the name Zoe, I would only find Zoe at the end. Okay, so this is the code for binary search here on the left. You don't have to use this specific method in practical, but when you are in an exam, they could maybe give you this method, but you have to be aware of this method to be able to answer a question like we have now. Now, for a binary search to work, you have to have your data sorted. It does not only work with strings, it works with numbers as well. But the data in your array has to be sorted from lowest to highest. So whether it's numbers or whether it is names. So in my example, I have names, Adam at the top, Zoe at the end, all in alphabetical order. And how this works is we're starting with be found as false. That's just going to make my loop stop once I find the person. And I'm going to start with I low as 1. And I high will be the value of your counter. Now, in our example, our counter is 8. That's the maximum I have there. And my loop will continue to search while I low is less or equal to I high. So the first time it loops, I low is 1 and I high is 8. So it will continue to search. And what's happening in here, instead of searching from top to bottom, I'm going to jump to the middle. So I mid then gets the value of I low plus I high. So I have 1 plus 8 is 9. Div 2 is going to give me 4. Remember, div gives you the integer part when I'm dividing a number. So 1 plus 8 is 9, div 2 is 4. So what I'm doing here is I'm jumping to the middle, and this is where Mia is stored. So what I'm searching here, first I just test, is the person that is currently in IMID, Mia, is it equal to George? No, it isn't. So this would be false. So I'm going to now go in this nested if statement and see if George is greater than Mia. Now remember, when we are comparing strings to each other, Delphi looks at the ASCII values of these strings. So you don't have to tell it go to character 1, go to character 2. It's going to compare and see George, is George bigger than Mia? No, it is not, because remember in our ASCII table, a G is before the M in the ASCII table. So therefore, this if statement here will be false, and because George is not bigger than Mia, and my next line here that will be executed is line 10, and I high is now changed. It was 4. I'm now changing my I high to 4 minus 1. So mid was 4. I high is being changed to 4. So what it is doing is it's so hard to show with just the mouse. I really love walking around the classroom. Okay, so I high used to be 8. So we found the middle to go here. Now what I'm doing is I am changing the highest one there, because I said the value that I'm searching is less than Mia. That means it must be in this top part here. So now I high has been changed to 4 here. Well, 3, sorry, we 4 minus 1. So my high value, I'm only searching through this part here now. And now I'm going to search, and I'm going to look if the person is in the middle again. So if I loop again, I low is still less than I high. I haven't found, B found is still false. So now I mid is giving the value of 1 plus 3, that's 4, divided by 2, and that's 2. So that would be the value. I mid is now 2, and I'm testing, is the person in I mid equal to what I'm searching for? In this example, yes, it is. So therefore, the B found is true, and none of the code here at the bottom is changing. Now, what I want you to do is, since we will get trace tables in the exam, for you to better understand this method of searching, use this example and go and draw up a trace table and then see how it would search. So find another name, look for Zoe or Tanya, or find another name that is above the middle as well. And you'll see how we are changing where we are searching. So it is important that the values are sorted, as you can see. So in this way, a binary search would be way more effective, because I don't have to run through all the code, because I keep on changing my range in which I'm searching for these values. I hope that makes sense for you guys, but a trace table would be brilliant for you to go and see how this binary search method works. So important to know about that for theory purposes. Okay, so last question here is asking us to get this is the example of output. And again, we are asked to write an algorithm. So I'm going to do another algorithm with you guys. Remember now, if you are going to use code, your syntax will be marked. So if you leave out a semicolon or you misspell string to int, you're going to lose a mark. You leave out a dot and you lose a mark. So it is easier to score marks you're writing algorithms. And this is the example of input. They give you 5, 3, 4, and you are supposed to then display 5 stars, 3 stars, and 4 stars. There's just an example of output again. So the top 2 lines here was given to you, and you just had to start there from the loop. But remember, I said to you, if you have to get input from the user, and you have to write that, you can just say, remember, we replace our assignment statements. We're going to replace with this arrow indicating the right gives a value to the left. So there, this solution here in this paper was using variable names, but you don't have to use variable names. You could say, let's say we get input for the number, and then you would use number everywhere where they use the variable names. But you can use the variable names, just don't code Delphi code or don't write Delphi code. You're going to lose marks. So here we're getting input from the user. And now I'm going to loop from 1 to the length of the input. Don't put your assignment statements there. Don't add your do. This is just how we indicate when we're looping. And remember, everything that's inside the loop, I'm going to indent. I don't indicate begins and ends. I just indent there to indicate that all of this runs on the inside of that loop. So let's say we look at the example of input. We're going to loop in this top one here. We're going to loop 3 times because the length of my input is 3. For every line, this is like displaying in a 2-dimensional array, like displaying in a rich edit. We're almost using we're using similar code. Every time I'm looping, I want to initialize S-line to an empty string because I want to build a new set of stars. I don't want to add on to the previous line of stars. Then in here, we are saying that the n that I'm looping to, I'm going to loop, and my inner loop has to have a different loop variable. I'm looping from 1 to n. So at the moment, this is input square bracket I, that let's say we are using that first example. This would be S input 1, and we are storing 5 there. Can you see we're not using string to int? We don't do any typecasting. And if you add it and you make a mistake, you lose that mark. So we almost code like in Python, where it ignores all the data types. So we don't add here string to int. We're just adding, we're going to use 5 now. So now we're looping j from 1 to 5. And all I'm doing here is adding a star, 5 stars to S-line. Make sure that now this, can you see it's indented because it falls under this inner loop. And I am replacing, so the code here looks very similar. I'm not putting my semicolons at the end. I use very similar code as in Delphi. No typecasting, and my assignment statement is replaced with the arrow. So S-line is S-line plus my star. And then very important that you display S-line. So you're not putting your objects in here either. I'm not saying I'm displaying in the rich edit or the label or whatever I'm displaying in. I'm just saying display and then the variable that I'm going to display. But important that it's indented here, because if you put it on the left here, you're indicating that it is outside my loop and not on the inside of my loop. So build your array of stars, display the string, and just to see how this code would work when I loop again now, we are now at I being 2. I initialize my string again, and now n gets the value of S input 2. S input 2 is now my 3, and I'm looping from 1 to 3, and I'm building 3 stars, and I'm displaying my 3 stars. The last time it loops, I would be 4, and I am looping from 1 to 4, and then I have 4 stars added to S-line and displayed. So I hope that helped you. Just before we go, I just want to ask you guys in the chat, some of you guys have answered me already. I want to ask you guys if you could maybe tell me in the chat if all of you guys are returning to school on the 1st of June. So if you know whether you're returning on the 1st of June, because I don't actually see the need if, you know, we're going to have lessons at 2 o'clock, then that's probably not going to work. And then next week might be our last week together. So, oh goodness, there I stopped sharing my screen. I'm sorry. So I just need to get an idea, and please let me know if there's anything. So it looks like majority of you guys are returning to school. So possibly next week would be our last week. Let's just see how it goes. Maybe we go back to level 5 and we stay home again. But let's see how it goes on Tomorrow, I want you guys to go and try the final of 2017 question 3. That's now tomorrow at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And what we'll do then on Monday is I'm going to give you guys a past paper. I'll just have a look today to see which one where we do some SQL questions. So it's going to be a much older paper, but they are brilliant to practice with. And on Monday, we'll then do a SQL question again, and then do some more theory. And I'd like you guys to think about what you want me to do for the last week together. We can continue to go as we are now, working through past practical and theory papers at the same time. I'd love to hear from you guys tomorrow, and then you guys can tell me what you prefer, and we'll see. Obviously, we won't all agree, but see what the majority of you guys want to do. Sean wants to go over 2Ds with checks files. I'm very happy to do that. We can do that tomorrow, next week again. But think about it, and then we'll talk again tomorrow at 2 o'clock, going over question 3, and then have some input from you guys as to what you guys want to do and go over. Okay, so this is it from me. Remember to go and download those past papers from education.gov.za and your exam guidelines. And remember to go and write down some questions for tomorrow. That's your homework, is to get some questions for me for tomorrow. So guys, thank you very much for watching me. This is grade 12 IT at STEM Lockdown Digital School. Please remember to follow Africa Teen Gigs on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and also see the videos there on YouTube, Africa Teen Gigs. I have asked them to update the grade 12 IT playlist, so hopefully they'll do that soon. Thank you guys. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.